For this project, I decided to explore the role of the Knights Templar in the Crusades. The Knights had a very interesting role in the Crusades. They had a significant impact on the financial dealings during this time period. They were the first group of people responsible for extending credit, mainly to the royalty. And mainly their financial practices had an effect on our current financial system today. This is one of the Knights Templar seals. It shows the Knights in their traditional dress of all-white uniform and a red cross on the white shield. The red cross symbolizes their connection to the church and their holy mission. Since the Knights were founded to protect the Holy Lands, the cross was a symbol that they turned to for strength. The image of a single horse and two riders comes from the idea that the Templars were sworn to poverty. Even though the Templars were sworn to poverty, they quickly accumulated wealth. The actual rules of the order forbid 2 knights from sharing a single horse and permit up to 3 horses per knight. The symbol has continued to be used despite of its inaccurate beginnings. After the Christian fighters captured Jerusalem during the First Crusade, groups of pilgrims from across Western Europe began visiting the Holy Land. Around 1118, a French knight named Hugh de Payens founded a military order devoted to protecting these pilgrims, calling it the Poor Knights of the Temple of King Solomon, later called the Knights Templar.
If you were with pilgrims and one of your friends, one of your buddies was killed, don't stop to bury him, because the grave you dig, he said, will be your home.
To offer increased protection to these pilgrims, a second holy order had been established. Combining a monastic way of life with the bearing of arms, this brotherhood believed fighting off the infidel was both an act of charity and a way to salvation. They became known as the Knights Templar, taking their name from their headquarters, the ancient site of the Temple of Solomon. Both of these military orders would quickly become for the Muslims the most feared and reviled symbols of the Crusader occupation.
They both become immensely powerful as monastic orders and as political forces in the Crusader states. They're able to do this because both Hospitallers and the Templars develop military strength. They become the elite fighting troops of the Crusader states, and they're essential to the survival of this world.
To underpin the defense of their new kingdom, the Templars and the Hospitallers oversaw the construction of a chain of castles. The most magnificent was Crac de Chevalier in modern-day Syria. Stark symbols of authority, these castles declared to the Muslims that the Christians were here to stay. But the Muslims dreamed of fighting back against the Crusaders and returning Jerusalem to their faith. An old Arabic word was being uttered once again. The word for struggle, jihad.
In 1129, the Knights received a formal endorsement from the Catholic Church. New recruits and lavish donations began pouring in from across Europe. Known for their code of conduct and signature-style dress, white habits, and a red cross, the Templars established new chapters throughout Western Europe. They developed a reputation as fierce warriors during the Crusades and set up a network of banks, gaining enormous financial sway. At the height of their influence, they boasted a sizable fleet of ships, owned the island of Cyprus, and served as a primary lender to European monarchs and nobles. The next slide is a map of Europe, and the green dots show the establishments that they had set up across the continent of Europe. The names on the maps are the previous names of the cities. The next slide shows the fleet of ships belonging to the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar established a great amount of wealth over the years and had a sizable fleet of ships. My interesting theory slide shows two separate theories surrounding the Knights. The first one is about a buried treasure located in Oaks Island, which is the island off the coast of Nova Scotia. Many people have searched for this treasure, but it has not yet been discovered. The other theory surrounds the Holy Grail. The Knights supposedly had knowledge of where the Holy Grail was, and know where it was hidden. The Knights Templar were the first group to begin processing the loaning of money at high interest rates, known as usury. This was how they increased their wealth, and eventually royalty began borrowing from them, lending to their eventual end. With their increased wealth became increased power, and the Knights Templar became a powerful force to reckon with in Europe. The end of the Knights Templar came when King Philip IV came and asked for another loan from the Knights. While he was already indebted to them, the Knights refused the loan, and King Philip IV ordered them to be annihilated. The last video is a video by John Green, the author of The Fault in Our Stars. It is a brief overview of why King Philip got angry and decided to do away with the Knights Templar.
Of the charges leveled against them by King Philip IV of France. So the question remains, why did Philip IV of France attack this most pious and respected of Christian religious orders? Malcolm Barber has argued that Philip's extreme financial difficulties led him to target the Templars. Barber has pointed out that virtually any groups which either stood in the way of Philip's financial goals or provided him with the potential of large amounts of property for confiscation were inevitably assaulted by Philip, such as the Jews, the Templars, and various wealthy citizens. Outside of France, popular contemporary opinion held that Philip was after the Templars' money. Indeed, there's no question that Philip's coffers were greatly augmented by confiscated Templar wealth. Philip IV's regime was constantly under threat from his neighbors. On top of that, his prestige had suffered since other kings, such as Edward I of England and various rulers of Spain, had been involved in crusades, while Philip, who came from a long line of crusaders, had not fulfilled his vow to rescue the Holy Land. It is not surprising, then, that Philip and his ministers were particularly sensitive to any hint of heresy, as they were eager to prove themselves supremely pious. The piety of the Templars and their sacrifices for the Holy Land were embarrassing for Philip, who had refused so far to venture on crusade. This alone may have been enough to prompt Philip to target the Templars. An example of Philip's wrath is found in the story of Marguerite Porte, a laywoman from northeastern France. Her book, The Mirror of Simple Souls, explored God's relationship to the human soul. Since she was not of the clergy and had written in the vernacular rather than Latin, her work raised suspicion of heresy, and she was examined by church authorities. The church declared all of her writing to be sound Catholic doctrine. However, shortly thereafter, Marguerite was again accused of heresy by clergy under Philip's jurisdiction. Despite the church's approval of her book, the bishops of Cambrai, Chalon-sur-Marne, and William of Paris, who also had been put in charge of the Templars case, by the secular French authorities. Despite her execution by the French crown, Marguerite's writings remained in good standing with the Catholic Church. In 1927, her book was published under the Haut Imprimatur seal of the papacy, and it is still read today in many Catholic circles. If the Church had approved of Marguerite's teachings, why had Philip IV's regime condemned her? Quite simply, Philip wanted to be seen as the most pious authority in Europe. This was the same king who would not shy from arresting bishops, even the Pope himself. The reality is that Philip wanted to be seen as setting the standard of Christian authority. He wanted to be the ruler of the Church. In addition to coveting the Templars' wealth and land, contemporaries saw another motive for Philip IV's arrest of the military order. We've already noted Philip's embarrassment at being one of the only important rulers in Europe who had not participated in a crusade. The fact is that Philip hoped very much to lead a crusade, which would eclipse the achievements of his fellow kings. It's interesting that when King James II of Aragon heard about Philip's arrest of the Templars, he viewed it as a plot by the French king to take over the whole crusade movement. James believed that Philip intended, by seizing control of the Templars, to clear the way for the establishment of a new military order under the direct control of the French crown. James felt that Philip hoped to actually gain control of all of the Templar land outside of France, thus making the French crown a super kingdom within Europe that superseded all other royal authority. It's easy to see why James II of Aragon would believe this. Philip had already shown himself a monarch of excessive ambition. It's no surprise that all over Europe, kings opposed the dissolution of the Templars, not only because they believed the Templars innocent, but also because they saw the whole thing as an elaborate power play on the part of Philip IV. Incidentally, Philip failed to gain control of the Templar land outside of France, most of which went to the Hospitallers, or back to the original donors. This leads us to a more general motivation of Philip's in harassing the Templars. Quite simply, Philip didn't like the independence of the Templars. He hated the idea of an international military power with land inside of France that was not answerable to the King of France. Philip had a similar attitude toward the papacy. He bullied the popes throughout his reign and sought to make the papacy a mere extension of French royal power. For decades, the Templars had been integral to the French administration, performing many important duties for the French king. But King Philip IV resented this independent religious organization being involved with the crown's affairs. He wanted to replace the Templars with his own people, who owed everything to him. History gives us a fairly clear understanding of just what Philip IV was trying to accomplish in attacking the obviously Orthodox Knights Templar. Whether or not the charges were true was of no consequence to Philip. This explains why he used his army to prevent debate over the matter at the end. Quite simply, Philip wanted to increase his own power and wealth, and he thought by stealing from and murdering the Templars, he could do just that. Unlike previous French kings whose genuine piety had led them to embrace the Templars, Philip was corrupt, power-hungry, hypocritical. For him, religion was nothing but a pretension designed to sway public opinion. It's no surprise that despite all his talk, Philip contributed absolutely nothing to the Crusade movement. One of the few satisfying aspects of the Templars' trial is that Jacques de Molay proved a prophet when he announced from the pyre that King Philip IV would soon suffer for his injustices against the godly Templars. This video draws on the research of Helen Nicholson in her book, The Knights Templar.
This is my works cited page, and this is the end of my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it.